Hey, what is going on, guys? In today's video, we're going to be doing a full weapon ranking of all the guns in Fortnite Project Era Season 6, and we are currently on patch 6.21. Now, I did do this video as sort of a prediction right before the season came out, but now that the season has been out for a while, I think it's a good time to reevaluate these rankings and have a final ranking as the season is coming to a close with Season 7 just around the corner. Let's quickly go over the tiers. So X tier is a gun that is completely game-breaking. Examples of the Day 1 P90 or Day 1 drum gun. These are guns that literally can fulfill almost any role. They're completely broken. S tier are those really strong guns. So think like tactical SMG. They're really strong. They can kind of fill two roles, but they're not completely game-breaking, but still really strong and probably should be nerfed. A tier, think like the Scar. It's a very solid gun. Doesn't need to be nerfed, but it's strong. Most people are going to want to run it. It's great. B tier, those are those good, viable choices that some people like, some people don't. You don't have to run it, but it can work. C tier is those kind of meh guns, they can work in a pinch. They're not terrible, but most people are not going to want to keep these in the end game. D are those really bad guns. Think like the standard pistol, right? They can work in the early game, sort of, but you're getting rid of this as soon as possible. E is just a reference point for the pickaxes. F tier is the joke tier. It's like the day one fully automatic sniper that did like 30 damage. These are the complete garbage. No one is running these. Or like OG SMG when it did 11 damage. This stuff is just a complete joke and no one's using this. So let's quickly go over what's been vaulted. So at the beginning of the season, we lost 3 guns. The silenced SMG, LMG, and guided missile. Guided missile was pretty bad, so that really doesn't matter. It was maybe fun for jokes like self-rocket riding, but this thing was bad. It's not really that big of a deal in terms of the meta, and it was so rare too. LMG and silenced SMG, kind of sad that we lost both of those because last season's SMG meta was very diverse. You had 4 viable choices, all of them almost equally powerful, but with the loss of those 2, it's unfortunate because we're now down to just 2 options. LMG I can kind of understand because yes, it's very spammy and it's very annoying, but the silenced SMG, that's not really that spammy, so I think it was really a negative thing to have lost this gun because it was a great competitor to the SMG and P90. And now we're just down to 2 options. Now, early in the season, you were able to get the dual pistols and semi-auto sniper. I think they were both C tier. They were both okay. Nothing special. Nothing too horrible, though. But eventually, they did get vaulted, so they're going in the vaulted tier. With that out of the way, let's start off with the shotguns. Tac shotgun, I still think is B tier. I've been ranking tac shotgun B tier since Season 5. Going into Season 6, it's still B tier. It's a decent gun. It's not terrible, and if it fits your playstyle, it can definitely work. Is it an A tier gun? No. I still think the shotgun delay is just too damaging to the tac to really make the tac shotgun any better. Let me show you why. Think about the tac shotgun versus the heavy shotgun. Tac shotgun fires faster, right? Well, think about this. What happens if you shoot, build a wall, and then shoot? Which one's going to fire faster? The truth is they're the exact same fire rate because you're limited to 1 shot every 1.25 seconds. So effectively, the tac shotgun can't utilize this rate of fire as you get better and build more and more. And this is a serious problem. And for that reason, I can't see the tac shotgun being higher than B. Does it work early game? Yes. Do I recommend you run this end game? Not really, especially given the blue pump shotgun right now. But it's not a terrible option. And if you really like it, you could make it work in the end game. It's an easy to use gun. I understand why people like it. So I think B tier is a good place. It's decent, but not amazing. Double barrel. Last season I was putting A tier. I've dropped it down to B. The damage nerf is big. Going from 150 to 120 damage, that's a serious nerf. It's very unreliable to clip someone out from 200 to 0 with 2 shots with a double. So I feel really scared running this without an SMG or a secondary shotgun. It's overall not a very reliable gun. Can it still work? Is this still deadly early game? Yes, it is. I mean, it still does a lot of damage if you're really up close. It's just not particularly reliable. So I think it falls in line with attack. It can work, but it's not something that's particularly amazing. Heavy shotgun I still think is A tier. I think the heavy shotgun's still a very solid choice. I think it's the only shotgun that can truly compete against the blue pump. It's good. It's got a great headshot damage, long range. It's very accurate. It works quite effectively. I think it's the perfect example of a well-balanced shotgun. It does things well, but it's not insanely busted. Because I still believe that the blue pump brings up the pump overall to S tier. Look, guys, the 8-tile range, as I said, 8-tile range with 95, 100 damage is not historical at all. So it makes the blue pump a very strong option. And overall, I honestly think it's a little too strong with that much range and that much damage, but it feels really good to use. And Honestly, the blue pump I think is still the strongest gun in the game. It's a very solid. Does a lot of damage. You just double body people all day. You can one shot people. I still think it's the strongest shotgun, but the heavy shotgun is a reasonable alternative if you don't like the pump shotgun playstyle. Just a quick recap then for in terms of meta choices, you really have the pump and heavy as endgame choices. All four of them can be pretty effective early to mid game though. Let's move on to the ARs. So the ARs pretty much I haven't changed any of my opinions in Season 5. I think it's exactly the same as it was before. Standard AR, the Gray through Blue I still think is B, and the Scar is still A. Good options. They're all-arounders. If you don't know what to pick, these are good choices to pick. Bursts, I still put a tier below. I think the bursts are alright. They're definitely viable choices. Are they as good as their standard competitor at the same rarity? Probably not. A little too much bloom. DPS is quite low. The max DPS on the burst is 134.1 versus 198 on the Scar. That's a big deficit to make up. They're viable, but I wouldn't say they're as strong. But, you know, if you really like the FAMAS, you could take it over a Scar. Sure. Sound AR, I still put B tier. Definitely a good option. It's very accurate, very effective at long range, but the bloom is really bad when full autoing. And it does little less damage than the Scar. So while I think it's a decent option, I think it's just like the burst. It's a viable choice, but it's not a gun that I would say is going toe-to-toe with the Scar. If you really like it, you could take it over the Scar, but that is personal preference. Scope DR, I still think is C tier. On keyboard and mouse is probably B, but on controller it's D. The fact of the matter is, with the Scope DR, you can't L2 spam, so I think that does bring it down for controller quite a bit. It's an all-right choice. DPS is a bit low, but yeah, it's okay. You know, it can do the job. If you like it, you can run it. Thermal, I still unfortunately have to put D tier. Look, the thermal is basically F on controller. It's basically unusable. Keyboard is maybe C. You know, it's all right. Thermal's DPS is just way too low. Maybe, you know, if you don't have great vision, you can use the thermal to spot people. But overall, this gun, just the DPS is just too low. And the damage isn't that much higher than the Scar. It doesn't really impress me in any way. So I still think it's a D tier gun. It's overall just not very good. Let's move on to SMGs. SMGs, I think they're both B tier. Look, I think the SMGs they're both equally powerful. You know, you have magazine and a little bit of accuracy versus fire rate, DPS, and reload time. Honestly, pick whichever one you want. They're both decent choices. They're not required by any means, but they're a reasonable choice, and you can definitely opt to run them. So 2 SMGs are viable, and for the ARs, I'd really say there are 3 viable choices. Scar, Burst, and Silenced, and if you want to run the scope on keyboard, also reasonable. Let's move on to the pistols. We need to talk about the hand cannon. I think I put the hand cannon A tier last time. I disagree with myself. I think it's S. The hand cannon is incredibly strong now because it works great as a shotgun backup. It works great as a pseudo sniper, pseudo AR, pseudo SMG. In a pinch, it can be a shotgun. This thing is just really good now, okay? It does 50 damage at range, one-shots walls from any distance. Wood wall, doesn't matter if it's full health, it's getting blasted out. This thing is so strong right now. It's just a dominant gun. And the pump plus hand cannon, that's a perfectly viable loadout. You don't even need automatic weapons right now. It's just really good. Does it fit everyone's playstyle? No, but it's a really strong option, and particularly on controller and keyboard too, but controller also, deadly gun. Highly recommend you try this one out. In terms of the other pistols, the standard pistol is still D tier. It's still bad. Is it a joke gun? No, but it's not good. I would still leave it as a D tier gun right now. Sounds pistol, I definitely say, is probably C. Sounds just a bit better. It can be a decent gun, actually. If you know how to work this thing, it can be alright. It feels nice. Is it as good as the AR, burst, silenced, compact? Probably not. You know, it doesn't have the DPS of the SMGs. The mag is kind of small. It's not bad, but it's not something that I would define as being particularly awesome, but it's alright, you know? 6-shooter, I have to say, is D. I might have said C last time, but I'm putting it D now. The 6-shooter is painfully bad. Look, is it a fun gun? Yes. But think about this. Let's say you pump someone for 60. Switch to the 6. You know, you hit maybe 3 shots, then you got to reload this thing, right? The SMG is so much more reliable at just destroying people at close range. This thing is so unreliable. The magazine is too small. And at long range, this thing does like 13 damage. It's a joke, okay? This thing is just a joke in every sense of the word. It's bad. Is it F tier, though? No. In a pinch, it can do pretty much any role. But it's basically like, think of like an AR, but just way worse. It can do everything the AR can do, but it's just bad at everything instead of being okay at everything. So, is it fun? Yes, but I do think it is truly bad. Now, let's move on to snipers. Heavy sniper, I'm still putting A tier. I still think the heavy sniper is the strongest option. That ability to one-shot walls from any range is very helpful. This thing has a boatload of damage. 150 body is ridiculous, right? This thing is definitely a really strong sniper, and if you like snipers, this is the one I would probably say to take. But bolt action and hunting rifle are both viable choices. You can really pick the heavy, bolt, or hunting if you'd like. They honestly, all three of them are viable, and they're all good choices. So I'd really say it's up to you. You know, do you want quick firing, more effective at closer ranges? Bolt action is kind of a middle ground. Heavy sniper works really well at long range. You can use it at close range as sort of a wall destroyer, but you know you have the scope, so you are a little bit restricted in your vision. But overall, any gun, any of these three are viable. It's totally personal preference. There's not really a right or wrong answer here. I think the heavy sniper is overall the strongest choice, but you could run a bolt or hunting. Similar to how the Scar is probably the strongest choice, but you could run a burst or silenced. Finally, let's move on to explodes. Nade launch, I still think is B tier. Is it a solid explosive? Yeah, but it is quite situational. It's completely useless at long range. It's very questionably useful at close range. It's really effective at that medium range, but that's kind of situational. And overall, it's not a gun that strikes me as being super strong, but it's definitely a viable choice, and you can definitely make it work. Quad launch, I'd say, is A tier. The quad launch is very good. Quad launch and bolt RPG are here. It's up to you which one you take. Do you want a little bit of rate of fire versus more damage? You know, do you want a faster projectile speed or a bigger splash radius? Either one. They're both really good, and you can pick whichever one you like. They're both viable, and they're both strong. Finally, the minigun I put in this kind of structure destroyer tier, I still think it's C. It's not D, because it is actually okay in squads. You know, if you have one person just lay down suppressing fire, hey, this thing can actually be okay. But the DPS isn't any better than the SMG. It's overall not a gun that strikes me as being particularly good, but it's alright, and in squads, it's situationally useful. So let's quickly just go over the overview of the meta. Shotguns, really it's pump or heavy. Tack and double kind of are viable, but really against the blue pump, that's questionable. ARs, you have standard AR, burst, silenced are all viable. Scoped on probably keyboard and mouse only. SMGs, you could run the compact or regular. Pistols, hand cannon is very strong. You can run that as your AR or as your SMG. The rest of the pistols are pretty bad. Silence is kind of okay, but not really. Snipers, you can run the heavy, bolts, or hunting, whatever you want. Explodes, you can run the quad launch, RPG, or nade launch, with the minigun being situationally useful in squads. So, thank you for watching this video, everybody. I hope this helps you, and I will see you in the next Gamer Coach video.